Hey guys, welcome to a solo episode with me, Jake. Today I want to talk about Bitcoin Treasury Companies. Now it's not something that's all that well understood at this point, even though there have been signs of what's going on for a number of years now. The process I'm going to go through now is just curating together a bunch of stories and figuring out what I think is actually happening. And so by the end of this video, I hope that you'll have a better understanding for what to think when it comes to these announcements you're seeing. Like daily, there's things coming through. This is going on. This is going on. This company's doing it. So where did this all start? Michael Saylor, obviously, shout out. Back in 2020, decides to YOLO his corporate treasury into Bitcoin. Now, for me personally, you will have heard me talk about before, if you're a listener to this channel, that it was just a massive moment for me. So hang on, this is a stock listed company that's taken Bitcoin onto the balance sheet. And it sparked in me a deep dive that, is now a lifelong passion, which is, what is Bitcoin? What's kind of crazy, right, is first of all, the performance of MicroStrategy since 2010 has been phenomenal. And I don't think anyone can question that. And you think, like, what a legend, right? The guy is at the tail end of his career to some extent, and the ability to remain nimble, to remain open-minded, and kick his business to a whole nother level is absolutely incredible to watch. You'll get, differing opinions on who he is and what he's doing, but from my perspective, this is just the kind of character that I like to learn from, who has serious skin in the game. And if they get it wrong, well, their life's work is in the drain. So they're going to do everything they can to make that not the case. And, I wish I'd bought some MicroStrategy stock all the way back in 2020, but I was so focused on looking at my own portfolio and thinking, well, what can I, why Bitcoin forces you to ask, why do I own what I own? It's like, okay, well, this set of assets that I had that wasn't Bitcoin. It's like, well, what do I want to do? I want to have Bitcoin in self-custody. Basically, for the last 4 years, completely disinterested in anything but Bitcoin in self-custody. However, as the purchasing power of that reallocation has increased, it's like, well, what might I do with my money to beat Bitcoin the hurdle rate as a speculator on further out on the risk curve? And things like Bitcoin Treasury Companies is exactly what I think I've been waiting for. And there's a number of reasons why I like them, which is obviously, first of all, it's Bitcoin related. So every single announcement that you see of this company's taking Bitcoin on the balance sheet, or this company's now listing on this exchange with Bitcoin on the balance sheet, or this company's sold equity to buy Bitcoin, or this company's sold some debt to buy Bitcoin. No news is bad news for Bitcoin. So that's fantastic for all of us who have been hodling the last couple of years. But it's another way to have Bitcoin exposure. But what's so cool, and I'll keep this super simple, because I'm relatively new to Australia, because I don't have a fiat employment contract, my income is very, very low. And I make my money by making investments. And so I pay taxes in different ways. But when it comes to the lending market, they just don't understand me. And the average lender looks at my balance sheet and it doesn't make any difference to them. They'd much prefer me to have no assets, but a couple $100 grand worth of income and as much debt. They wouldn't care if they think I can afford the loan. And so my cost of debt, recently I was given over 9% to borrow some money to go and buy a piece of physical real estate. Whereas Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy, the last time I saw the figure, he was able to raise debt at under 1% and fix it for a period of time. I can't retell the exact details, but the point is, as a publicly listed company, as an entity, has tools at its disposal that aren't necessarily available to the retail market, to the average punter like myself, trying to figure out, like, how do you store your wealth, how do you grow your wealth, and if you were going to take risk, what might that look like? So this is really cool. But what blew my mind in a little brief bit of research I was doing in order to make this podcast is like how complex this already is. And MicroStrategy itself, MSTR, the stock ticker is on NASDAQ, right? 506,000 Bitcoin on the balance sheet as of March 2025. Now, the first thing that will kind of trip people up here is that most companies are valued based on their operations. And so they're looking every year at, like, what revenues this company made, what were the costs, what were then the taxes, okay, what's the EBITDA of this business? But what Bitcoin Treasury Companies are doing is actually, they're essentially monetizing the balance sheet. And with the new accounting rules that are coming in, the gain in balance sheet value is going to count as revenue. So I saw another stat recently is that if in a week or so's time, the quarterly earnings of MicroStrategy are calculated, if Bitcoin's over 118,000 US dollars a coin, then MicroStrategy will report the most profitable quarter in the history of companies. Like, no, they'll outperform Apple, everything. And it's an absolute masterstroke. And what I like about Saylor in particular is it's like he's got this like 35 years worth of skills, expertise, and kind of nous. And he could have retired, right? He could have gone, fuck it, I'm done. I'm going to go and chill out and do whatever. But actually, this is what caught my attention when he bought Bitcoin back in 2020. He was thinking through a lens of how do I know the person managing my company 100 years from now has the best possible chance of survival? And that's how I was trying to think about managing my inheritance. I was like, oh, well, I know that I've got to get it to the next generation, and I want to do that in the optimal way. How do I do that? So when I heard him say that, I was like, holy shit, this is mega. Let's figure out what the hell's going on here. And so now as I kind of flick through this research, like, well, MSTR, it's so much more than that now. So that's the NASDAQ listed entity, but they've released one called MSTY, which is what they're calling like the yield max. So you can actually buy this. You can buy this in favor of getting yield. So in the last cycle, you might have heard like a Celsius or a BlockFi, FTX, you just deposit your digital assets with us and we'll give you a yield. And it's like, if you're getting that, like, where's the yield coming from? Whereas in this case, you've got a stock listed business, fully regulated, that's able to play with the financial engineering expertise on the back end and the suite of different public market financial tools to generate yield. And now you can just own the stock and earn a yield with it. It's quite incredible. And on top of that, they've got then different preferred stocks, STRD, STRF, STRK. I'm not going to go into the details of all of these now. You can even own MSTU, which is a leveraged ETF. And they also have convertible bonds, right? Companies like Allianz, the big insurer, I know that they were a massive bidder on one of the convertible bond rounds that they did. And it's like, okay, these are serious institutional players that are now getting Bitcoin exposure in a way that it just simply wasn't possible 4 to 5 years ago. And to me, this is like extraordinarily bullish. So just to summarize, like MicroStrategy's already like pioneered the playbook for a corporate treasury strategy with Bitcoin. But now us as retail investors, we've got all these different like kind of slipstreams of Saylor that we can go and kind of pick up. And it's like, okay, well, what kind of risk are you looking to take? What size of your portfolio are you looking to take that risk with? And do you want some kind of dividend, or are you looking for capital growth? Like, what are you actually out there to try and do? And for that, it's pretty epic, right? So that's where I wanted to start, was really just like busting through MicroStrategy. Now, do I own any? No. Would I like to? Yes. When is it time to try and buy? In my view, and I'm trying to stick to the strategy I created from a couple years back, is I'm looking at a sell window for Bitcoin itself in the next like 2 to 3 months. Like August of 2025 was always when I was roughly speaking looking to see a new all-time high. Now, as of right now, I would be highly unsurprised by like a 160, 170,000 US dollar Bitcoin price in the very near future. You'll see some outrageous predictions, and they may happen. I wouldn't be against that, of course. But trimming your position in the months to come may not be a bad idea. And I'm actually looking about 12 to 18 months from now when there's going to be one hell of a bear market to go, okay, what are some more speculative bets I can make to run up this next bull? Now, I'm not someone who's sophisticated enough to short stocks, but I'd be looking at shorting some of this speculative Bitcoin Treasury business stuff over the next maybe 6 months and betting on the downside. But that's not something that I'm able to do at this stage. Maybe I should try and figure that out. But some of the other big names that I've seen this week, like obviously Mr. Trump, whatever games he might be playing, he doesn't hang around. There's no doubt about that. So $2.3 billion they've picked up to go and invest into Bitcoin. Metaplanet's the story out of Japan where, from memory, they had a hotel. They were a stock listed business with some essentially commercial real estate and hospitality type play, and their market cap was under $100 million. And they've just announced that they're going to raise $5.4 billion to go after Bitcoin. They want 210,000 Bitcoin on the balance sheet by 2027. That stock's already performed brilliantly. Now, again, have I missed the boat there? Perhaps. Did I have access to a Japanese stock trading account? No. The team UTXO management that are behind that there, and the guys involved with BTC Inc., they've got a playbook, right? And it's rolling out in different places. I saw a recent announcement from Jesse Myers, who's joining a business that's in Hong Kong. So like massive money in the Chinese market, buying an equity that's going to focus on a Bitcoin strategy. I think that could be a very, very good bet. Now, again, I still have a preference for Bitcoin and self-custody, but at some stage, it's like, well, what's something slightly further out on the risk curve that I might consider? And it's absolutely this kind of stuff. Now, some of the other announcements that came through, like something like 30 companies I read over the last week have come up with Bitcoin strategies. Like 30 companies. This is not some trivial thing. You got that one friend who's like, oh, Bitcoin doesn't have any value. You can't buy your coffee with it. It's like, mate, stock listed companies around the world are taking Bitcoin on the balance sheet. They're taking on a varying array of different strategies, and they have tools at their disposal that are simply more sophisticated than the average person. They don't give a shit about buying coffee. Simple. And some of these names are big, right? We've already touched on Trump, but in Europe, there's a company called the Blockchain Group, 10 Bill. There's a Norwegian block exchange deal that's been done. They're the first people in Norway to do this. I know here in Australia, there's a company called Locate that has done it. I've been trying to get in touch with the CEO, Steve, to have a conversation with him. Your first ASX listed Bitcoin Treasury play. And what does that mean? Like, are people actually jumping on the bandwagon? What's that equity price going to do? Now, of course, first and foremost, consider the situation you're in. Like, are you actually in a position to take more risk? Yes or no? And what skills and sophistication do you have to make these decisions? But equally, just remember that the equities that you're buying, like MicroStrategy is different MSTR to MSTY. Like they're different things under the hood. In the same way that you have the FTSE 100, for example. Thinking back to my home country of the UK, you've got 100 companies on there, but they can be from very different industries. Now they're all equities, but like how much debt does each one have? What kind of customers do they have? What kind of margins do they make when they sell their products? How old is the business? There's just so many different things that go into the valuation of a business. Like, are you looking at the price to earnings ratio? Are you looking at the net asset value? It's ultimately down to the discretion of the investor, of course. Like, value is subjective. There might be something you know about that company that other people don't understand. And that's where you can really, really make good money. Something that really caught my attention was Nakamoto Holdings. So this is David Bailey involved in BTC Inc., also UTXO management, and teamed up with a healthcare business. And they've raised 710 million. And I know that Jack Mallers out there with 21, teaming up with people like SoftBank and Tether. These guys don't mess around. 1.5 billion has gone into 21 from Tether, 900 million from SoftBank, 600 million from Bitfinex. Like, it's massive. They're not messing around. Now, what does this mean? Obviously, on the demand side for the Bitcoin price, there's going to be a bid, right? They're just going to be hoovering up coins. How interested are they in like buying the dip versus waiting for the next bear market? I don't know. And that will come down to the sophistication of the teams that are actually allocating those assets. But some other names that I came across that were interesting, right? Digi Asia, I think they're in Indonesia, 100 million. It's like, okay. Strive, they raised a ton of money as well, 750 million. And you're just like, God, this is just picking up and picking up. So I've got a number here, 15 billion. So I was trying to find out, it's like, what's the total capital raised year to date by Bitcoin Treasury Companies? And yeah, so roughly 15 billion is what I'm seeing here. Now, I don't think there's anyone out there that's actually crunched the numbers on these. You've obviously got people raising money in different currencies. You've got doing it in different jurisdictions. They're doing it with a combination of debt and equity. So it's pretty hard to figure that out. But maybe I should spend some time doing it. The point is like, what is going on with this Bitcoin corporate treasury like world? It's like a whole new industry essentially. And what a surprise! Like, businesses deal in money. 50% of everything a business does is money. So whether they're selling a service, will they exchange that service for money? Are they selling a product? Will they exchange that product for money? It makes absolute sense that the future of money is incorporated into the absolute bowels of every high-performing business. And this currently, in some ways, is just a reflection on how unbelievably early we are. Like, the fact this is even newsworthy is hilarious because it's just money. Oh, a business is taking on some money. It doesn't, like, it's not a big deal, right? Or a business is updating its accounting process. Like, it's just not, it's not that big a deal if you really like take a sit back and go, oh, okay, well, Bitcoin's just money, and therefore businesses are using money. That's exactly what they do. Their entire purpose for most privately owned companies or publicly listed businesses is to maximize shareholder value, and they do that by making money. Now, of course, we're still at the very, very early stages of Bitcoin in terms of its market adoption. Is this the kind of crossing the chasm moment? It could be, right? And you see in particular the traditional finance world, like I've talked about this just recently, there's $900 trillion of assets out there. The vast majority of them are going to be managed by a very small handful of people. So whether that's the ultra wealthy themselves or that's the fund managers that look after this wealth. And so you've got to basically persuade a bunch of these people that Bitcoin's a good idea. And then boom, you'll start to see like huge allocation decisions coming through. The fun part, we've been able to front run that. And with that front run, I'm now looking at this extra purchasing power I've got. And I'm thinking, well, why not use some of that? And at what point do I want to take some profits, take some risk off the table? And my hesitation thus far has always been, if you're selling Bitcoin, what are you buying? Like, in all seriousness, what are you buying when you sell your Bitcoin? Because if it's not something that can outpace Bitcoin from a price perspective or purchasing power perspective, or it's not some kind of life necessity, then what the hell are you selling for? Like, there's no reason to sell. Yes, we could spend all day long doing technical analysis and be like, okay, well, if we sell today, we might have to buy back then, or we buy back then and we sell then. But at the end of the day, like, just holding Bitcoin, it buys you space, it buys you time. And that is the beauty of it, right? It just sits in self-custody. No one's going to take it from you. You know that it can't be debased on the back end. And you know that it's going to grow in purchasing power over time. So go and have fun with your family. Go on holiday. Spend time listening to music. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, it opens up your time for other things to come in. And so we're no longer having to be full-time wealth managers or equity experts on top of our full-time day jobs to just keep our money. We can just put it in Bitcoin, and that's why I like it as a savings technology. But yeah, so I'm very intrigued by this evolution that is the Bitcoin Treasury business, and I think it could well be something that I had assumed would happen at some point, but actually what I'm getting a sniff for now is the opportunity to profit from it. And I say that with a pinch of salt, because for me, it's still going to be highly speculative, and it's still going to be small portions of a total portfolio. And it has to be for the right reasons. I much prefer the idea of doing this than betting on crypto tokens, for example. It's like, because this in some way helps to reinforce the demand for Bitcoin, which in itself helps to reinforce my major position in Bitcoin self-custody. Now, what are some of the risks to think about? Of course, there are always risks. So who's the managing team of the business? Like, number one, that's the first thing I'd go and look at. Like, what track record do they have? How hardcore a Bitcoin maxi are they? How much appetite for risk have they got? What kind of debt do you reckon they can get their hands on? Will they issue more equity? And start there, right? The best people will be out there in public talking about what they're talking about. And for example, I've listened to the Metaplanet CEO talking, and he's just like ex-Goldman Sachs. These guys aren't fucking around. They really know what they're doing. I have a small position in Matador, and Devon, who's running that business, is the same, right? These guys, they really understand their ways around capital markets, and for that reason, they make a great bet. And actually, shout out to the guys building Matador, because that's really given me a taste for looking at this space more seriously. It's like, okay, I've made some paper gains because I'm not selling it by any means, but it's like, okay, wow, this is something that's really working. And in some ways, that's what investing is, right? It's like, you want to be making bets, and when you make a bet, you get a bit of skin in the game, you get a bit of a flavor for it. And in some ways, I should just do this with MSTR. I should just buy some and just sit on it and see how it feels. And in the sense of like a game of poker, right? you get your initial hand and you can see if it's like half good or not great or whatever. But the second that the fourth card comes down, you're like, oh wow, okay, there's only one more card to be played, and am I going to like up my bet or am I out? And you can start to see a trend, right? And the same applies with putting money into different investments. You'll put some money into something and it just does nothing. And the truth is, it's always a guess. It's like, I think this is a good idea. Okay, put your money where your mouth is. And then 6 months later, or 3 months later, or 3 years later, whatever your initial strategy was for the hold period, you can then review and be like, has this done what we expected? What's been good? What's been bad? The good, the bad, and the ugly is always quite a way of running through it. And put more money in, right? Why not? In some ways, with Matador, when it IPO'd, it started trading at a number less than what I paid. And what I probably should have done is I should have bought more. But I just wasn't in the right headspace because I wasn't really thinking about it more than like, okay, this is a speculative bet. There's a person involved in the business in particular that I really like. And for that reason, I'm in with some capital. Let's just see how it goes. And then here I am 6 months later going, okay, well, it's gone well in terms of price action. What's been going on under the hood? Well, I'm starting to see newsletters each week, and that's interesting. And it's like, well, where might this go? Well, look at all this other kind of market information that's coming out about different businesses doing similar stuff. Well, the truth is this trend is big. So if you can catch the trend is your friend. Now, one thing I guess I would say as a risk is I'm very, very aware of the connection between the equity price of these Bitcoin Treasury businesses as they are balance sheet plays. So they're trading at multiples of net asset value. So if someone's got one Bitcoin on the balance sheet, then it might be an equity price of 1.2 or 1.4. It depends what it's actually been valued at the time, like whatever the market is obviously selling at. But I'm very wary of the next bear market. Like I think the all-time high will be set at some point over the next 3 to 6 months, and then we're going to have an absolutely savage sell-off. And that's purely based on historical information. I don't see the trend of the 4-year cycle breaking. Some people out there will be talking up the fact this is a super cycle and there's more money coming in than ever before. Well, Bitcoin seems to track the global M2, the global liquidity supply, very, very closely. And I think that with the halving process involved, there's no reason why, in my mind at least, that's what I'm preparing for. It's like, okay, we're going to get a nice gain over the next 3 to 6 months, and then it's going to sell off like an absolute bitch. And when that happens, these Bitcoin Treasury companies are going to plummet as well, because they are full of speculative hounds, right? People who've got fiat, they've got dollars, they're betting on stocks, and they hear about this Bitcoin stuff. It's like, this is just another Bitcoin stock. Okay, great. Let's put some money in. And in some ways, it's great because the excess liquidity floating around the system that sometimes people would have considered crypto tokens, right? They get their Coinbase account, they flip it into USDT or USDC, and then they go and bet on some crypto tokens. And instead of saying, oh, I can't afford a whole Bitcoin, I can get 10 of these, the unit bias plays a part. There's then all the pump and dump groups on Telegram that are pumping stuff out there. This is a much, much, much better investment than a crypto token. Like hands down, right? So it's an equity, so it's part of a business. That business, generally speaking, will be on a stock listed, will be on an exchange. So there's a regulation process. There's a team of lawyers, team of accountants, team of rules to abide by. That to me is a much, much better place to be making speculative bets than in crypto tokens. But each to their own, right? You do whatever you want with your money. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Very, very exciting to see what happens with Bitcoin Treasury businesses in the months and years to come. I will definitely be making some speculative bets myself. I have yet to decide where, how much, with who, and we'll see. Maybe I'll do another post about like what I'm looking at and give more specifics on what are some of the high level metrics to be aware of, what are some of the things that I'm looking for in a business when I might make an investment. Reach out at jakewoodhouse.io if you'd like to get some more information or figure out where I got some of this stuff from for this podcast in terms of the research I did. And look, very best of luck to all the founders out there that are building Bitcoin Treasury businesses. Absolutely epic to see you incorporating Bitcoin into the core of the business. This is the future. And so we're just getting the very early signs here of why Bitcoin is just money. And of course, businesses getting involved. Thank you.